most important chemical discovery referred to by Albert
Professor Dr. Sharifah Hafsah Syed Hassan Shahabuddin, Vice Chancellor Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. Yang berbahagia Dato' IR Dr. Haji Ahmad Zaidi Laidin, Vice President Academy of Sciences Malaysia. Mr. Uwe Morawetz, Chairman of the International Peace Foundation. Yang berbahagia Professor Dato' Muhammad Abdul Razak, Deputy Vice Chancellor Research and Innovation, UKM. Yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Sharifah Hafsah Syed Hassan Shahabuddin, Naib Chancellor Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. Profesor Dr. Roger Kornberg, Nobel Laureate. Yang berbahagia Dato' IR Haji Ahmad Zaidi Laidin, Vice President Academy of Sciences Malaysia. Mr. Uwe Morawetz, Chairman International Peace Foundation. Yang berbahagia Profesor Dato' Dr. Muhammad Abdul Razak, Deputy Vice Chancellor Research and Innovation, UKM. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and thank you for gracing this morning's occasion. Professor Kornberg, Mr. Morawetz, Yang Bahagia Dato' IR Dr. Haji Ahmad Zaidi Laidin, welcome to Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. It is indeed our pleasure to welcome you to our beautiful campus in conjunction with the Malaysian Bridges Program. To begin this morning's program, I would like to invite our guests to sit back and view a short video on the activities and achievements of Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. gentlemen, as mentioned earlier, Professor Kornberg is in Malaysia as part of the Malaysian Bridges program. This program involves the participation of Nobel Laureates and is organized by the International Peace Foundation in collaboration with the Academy of Sciences Malaysia and public Malaysian universities. I would like to now invite Mr. Uwe Morawetz, Chairman of the International Peace Foundation, to say a few words.
Welcome to the second ASEAN event series, Bridges, Dialogues Towards a Culture of Peace. Bridges is facilitated by the International Peace Foundation, a non-political and non-religious foundation under the common patronage of 21 Nobel Peace Prize laureates based in Vienna. The events are hosted in cooperation with various local partners, including the country's major universities. And I would like to thank the Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia and its Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Sharifah Syed Hafsa Shahabuddin, for hosting our event today. Having started in November 2008, Bridges is being continuously held in Malaysia and Thailand until April 2009, involving the participation of Nobel Laureates for Peace, Physics, Chemistry, Medicine and Economics. The second ASEAN series of Bridges is an independent contribution to the Decade for a Culture of Peace and Non-Violence, initiated and promoted by the United Nations General Assembly. It follows the Bridges series, which the International Peace Foundation has already hosted in Thailand and the Philippines since 2003. The pluralistic program of Bridges highlights the International Peace Foundation's intercultural and transdisciplinary approach towards peace. The foundation does not take sides, but acts as a mediator by creating an independent platform for dialogue where representatives of science, politics, economy, culture, religion, the media and youth can meet, share their viewpoints, listen to each other and find mutual ways of understanding and cooperation. Therefore, the foundation itself is a bridge and a facilitator between different language groups in our divided societies, where politicians speak another language than artists, and business and religious leaders another one than scientists. In a highly interdependent world, problems cannot be solved by either one of these language groups only, but by finding ways of working together. After the success of its Bridges programs in Thailand and the Philippines, the International Peace Foundation has been invited by other ASEAN countries to build further bridges towards peace and international understanding by expanding its program in Southeast Asia to stimulate the intellectual, scientific and cultural exchange in the region. The second ASEAN Bridges series therefore continuously takes place in Malaysia and Thailand from November 2008 to April 2009, comprising events with Nobel Laureates from all fields. The Nobel Laureates will visit the region not all at once, but separately to conduct public lectures, seminars, workshops and dialogues hosted by local institutions during a continued period of 6 months. The aim of Bridges is to facilitate and strengthen dialogue and communication between societies in Southeast Asia with their multiple cultures and faiths, as well as with peoples in other parts of the world, to promote understanding and trust. The events aim at building bridges through Nobel Laureates with local universities and other institutions in Southeast Asia to establish long-term relationships which may result in common research programs and other forms of collaboration. By enhancing science, technology and education as a basis for peace and development, the events may lead to a better cooperation for the advancement of peace, freedom and security in the region, with the active involvement of the young generation, ASEAN's key to the future. This is why Bridges is not designed as a one-time event, but as a continuing process of synergies to make the series of events a sustainable success for Malaysia and for Southeast Asia as a whole. I'm grateful to the Malaysian Honorary Chairman of Bridges, His Royal Highness Raja Nasrin Shah, and to our Chairman Tun Musa Hikam. Their powerful guidance paved the way for Bridges to bear fruit. I'm also grateful to the representatives of our local partner institutions who have developed the detailed schedule of the events in continuous meetings, as well as to our sponsors who have enabled us to make Bridges a reality. I would like to say thank you to everyone present today for taking part in this program. May it help us to facilitate a new culture of peace through dialogue, transcending its definition as merely the absence of war or armed conflict, into a new understanding what the basis for peace is: education. In this spirit, we welcome today the 2006 Nobel Laureate for Chemistry, Professor Roger Kornberg, who has agreed to come to Malaysia to support the events. We all look forward to his keynote speech and to his important contribution to build bridges. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morawetz. I now call upon Yang Bahagia Dato' IR Dr. Haji Ahmad Zaidi Laidin, Vice President of the Academy of Sciences, Malaysia.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning. Professor Roger Kornberg, the Nobel Laureate of 2006 in Chemistry, our special guest speaker. Yang Bahagia Professor Dr. Sharifah Hapsah, Vice Chancellor, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, His Excellency Dr. Donatus Coit, Ambassador Austria, Mr. Uwe Morawetz, Chairman of International Peace Foundation, the management and academies of the UKM, fellows of the Academy, I see a couple here, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Academy of Sciences, Malaysia, I am indeed honored to say a few words on this occasion. Let me first begin by saying that the Malaysian Bridges series of events is a remarkable series. It provides a platform to hear from an impressive array of speakers, ranging from Nobel Laureates, that has been mentioned earlier, in physics, chemistry, medicine, and so on, as well as world-renowned artists and several prominent international personalities. And this program, so far, we have 2 Nobel Laureates, one in physics and one in economics by my count. Mr. Uwe Morawetz says 2 just now. I said the 3rd. It is already the 3rd. And I was privileged to attend all the 3 of these speeches by the Nobel Laureates. Ladies and gentlemen, the Academy of Sciences Malaysia considers hosting Professor Roger Kornberg a tremendous honor, particularly since we also had the privilege of hosting his late father, Nobel Laureate Professor Arthur Kornberg, in 2002. As you already know, perhaps, that Professor Roger Kornberg's father, Arthur Kornberg, himself won a Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1959. And I was told that Professor Roger Kornberg was there to see his father receiving this honor 47 years earlier. They have etched their names in history as one of the 6 ever father-son pair to win a Nobel Prize. And for us in Malaysia, this is the first. But it doesn't stop there. His family, his mother was also a scientist. His brother was also a scientist. And Even the youngest brother is an architect, apparently specializes in design of biomedical and biotechnical building laboratories in the United States. Although not quite, you know, as an architect, he's still involved in biomedical and biotechnology. On behalf of the Academy of Sciences, I also wish to take this opportunity to convey our sincere appreciation to the International Peace Foundation, particularly Mr. Uwe Morawetz, for facilitating this series of events, and everyone else who have contributed one way or another to make this series possible. And this time, a special thank you to our host, Universiti Kebangsaan, for your kind collaboration, partnership, and commitment. I must say, Vice Chancellor, coming here is a special occasion for me, because several years ago, and that shows how old I am, I was involved in the early group that put up a paper to establish this university. And it was all started from the Dewan Bahasa. Perhaps not many realize that. The late Tun Nasir, Syed Nasir, was instrumental in this. And that initial paper said Universiti Bahasa Kebangsaan, not University Kebangsaan. So I think for the information of Professor Kornberg, what we actually saw on the video, there was English words that were taken out and the Malay words putting in. And it was very, to me, special message. Because trying to make the Bahasa Melayu, the Malay language, a language of learning. Congratulations on that excellent video presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, frankly, the more I attend this lecture series, the more I learn, and the more I want to attend. And the relevance is clear, because given the challenges of globalization, the present problems related to climate change, the rapid decline in the quality of environment, the depletion of natural resources, and the increasing pressure to meet basic human needs such as food, water, and energy in a sustainable manner, clearly indicates that something has got to be done. More than that, peace is not just about absence of war. What we are finding out is that peace means a lot more to me. It means the well-being of society, the continued sustainable well-being of society. Adequate and continued supply of food and comfort. Safety in all aspects of the word. A sloped failure can cause a lot of problems, not just to the houses and the dwellers, but we also notice there's also a breakdown in law and people started to pilfer and so on. This certainly does not constitute peace in my book. Tsunami is another great tragedy that affected many people in this part of the world. Consequently, a proper understanding of the way science, technology, and innovation can help improve the general condition and well-being, both social and economic, in a sustainable manner is extremely crucial. Of course, more than just that, there's a need to prioritize science and technology in development policies and follow through with efficient implementation towards ensuring benefit to society. Therefore, I hope that we can make the best of these opportunities provided by Bridges, the series of events, the sharing of knowledge and experience, exchange of ideas, dialogues and understanding of different perspectives on a wide range of topics towards building a progressive and knowledgeable society that can think and act to ensure societal well-being and a better future for everyone. Thank you very much. Salam alaikum.
Thank you, Yang Berbahagia Datuk. Ladies and gentlemen, it now gives me great pleasure to call upon Yang Berbahagia Profesor Dato' Dr. Sharifah Hapsah, Vice Chancellor of Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, to welcome and introduce Professor Kornberg.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Good morning. On behalf of the National University, izinkan saya berbahasa Inggeris. On behalf of UKM, I take great pleasure in welcoming our very distinguished speaker, Professor Roger Kornberg, Nobel Laureate for Chemistry in 2006. We welcome also the Honorable Dr. Dato' Engineer Haji Ahmad Zaidi Lagi, the Deputy President of the Academy of Science of Malaysia, of course Mr. Uwe Morawetz, the Chairman of the International Peace Foundation, His Excellency Dr. Donatus Quirk, Ambassador of Austria, all these distinguished guests present today, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the International Peace Foundation for making this lecture possible at UKM. We are proud to co-host this Bridges Dialogue towards a Culture of Peace program. There are many reasons why UKM is proud to be part of this global initiative to bridge cultural divides and foster peace through academic dialogues. This initiative embodies our ideals of academics and students, transcending the realm of academia in making a direct contribution to the betterment of society. Such links to the real world of society enhances the quality, social relevance and effectiveness of our educational and research programs, which we tried to show in the video. The social engagement furthers another critical mission of our university, one that we call the cultural mission. In carrying out this mission, we put our resources in service of the community as active agents and partners in social change. Under the rubric of culture, we steer research and curricula to meet emerging societal needs, to provide innovative ideas and practices for the solution of local problems, to improve the social importance of knowledge throughout the community, to educate, to develop, to imbibe values of responsible and productive citizenry, and to meet the challenges of multicultural societies and globalization. We do this in living up to our motto, as you saw on the video, of inspiring futures and nurturing possibilities, and in keeping the great talents in our UKM intact. More importantly, it is also in full cognizance of our role as a national university. Over time, we have kept national, not just Bahasa, which is expected to produce, protect, and inculcate the idea of national self-knowledge or culture and values. Apart from promoting Malay as an academic language, the cultural mission recognizes knowledge as the defining element in the preservation and propagation of values such as responsibility, right and wrong, good and evil, traditions, customs, experiences, meanings, beliefs and material objects which cover the course of generations collectively to give us our identity or national self-knowledge, and our role in reconciling this cultural image of ourselves with the global quest for peace and understanding. In this quest, we hope to stimulate independent thinking and opinion-making about societal issues such as hunger, health, poverty, social imbalance, climate change, environmental degradation, cultural divide, and conflicts. This morning, we are gathered to hear Professor Kornberg's views on basic science, the hope of progress. UKM is honored to present this public intellectual, and we have taken the liberty to print a short biography of his illustrious career in the cutting-edge field of molecular biology. Please do read it. His research epitomizes the kind of most important chemical discovery envisaged by Alfred Nobel in his will. From his discovery of the nucleosome and his studies on how genetic information is copied from the DNA to RNA, Professor Kornberg has further unlocked the mystery of life. Ever since DNA was first isolated in the mid-1800s and demonstrated as the double helix in the mid-20th century. This deoxyribonucleic acid, as we know today, contains the genetic instructions used in the development and functioning of all known living organisms and some viruses. Professor Kornberg has shown how information stored in the DNA segments or genes is passed on as instructions to construct other components of cells, such as proteins and RNA molecules, as well as how this process is regulated or mediated. After hearing you, Datuk Laidi, I'm convinced Professor Kornberg and his father have mastered this process very well in winning the Nobel Prize. More profoundly, Professor Kornberg has shown the molecular basis of our similarities. We may be divided by geographical, cultural and ideological boundaries, but our life processes are the same. It is not too late, and I, on behalf of the audience, take the opportunity to personally congratulate you for winning the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2006. Ladies and gentlemen, I know of no other person more eminent than Professor Kornberg to speak on basic science, the hope of progress. Professor Kornberg.
Madam Vice Chancellor, Mr. Morawetz, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm most grateful for this opportunity. I am more than pleased to participate in this important Bridges program. It is a pleasure to visit for the first time this country and this great university, and I'm most appreciative of your hospitality. In a recent contribution to Bridges, the physicist Sheldon Glashow, who you may have heard, who spoke elsewhere in the program, commented on the importance of basic science, which I noted in the title. And I might point out, I have presented on this slide a shortened version of a longer title. I address the same subject as originally proposed, and this, as I say, is a kind of summary statement of the title. Sheldon Glashow commented on the importance of basic science, and in particular of serendipity, of chance discovery, for technological development and for benefits to humankind. In his lecture, which you may read, he gave examples from physical science, and he described their impact, in particular upon engineering. I myself have often made similar arguments in relation to biomedical science and its impact on human health. I would like to begin today with biomedical science and then extend the discussion begun by Professor Glashow along several lines to include the following: the underlying reason and the indispensable nature of basic research, the meaning and the mechanism of serendipity, of chance discovery, the relationship of basic science to industry, to government and to society. Finally, the relationship of science and religion, which must be addressed in any such discussion, including the implications for cultural accommodation between peoples and ultimately the peace, which is the purpose of the organization sponsoring this series. Now, let me make one disclaimer. I must emphasize at the outset, my expertise lies in a limited area of chemical and biomedical science. I'm not a social scientist, and my opinions on such matters are entirely personal. They may be of interest, perhaps even provocative, but they carry no more weight than those of any other member of this audience. Let me begin with the history of biomedical science. Some of the important points that I'll make are summarized on the first slide. It may surprise you to know that medical science, as we understand it today, is only about 100 years old, whereas physics and chemistry began centuries before. Human biology was largely neglected. Human disease, until recently, was attributed to an imbalance of humors, and the treatments were bleeding and violent hurls. Doctors were not even educated men. With the first stirrings of medical science, the president of Harvard at the time, Charles Eliot, proposed adding it to the curriculum at the medical school, to which a noted surgeon in the medical school on the faculty objected this would be impossible because few of his students could read or write. Today, medical science stands as a triumph of the intellect and the greatest frontier for intellectual activity of the future. If the 20th century was the age of physics, then the 20th century is surely the age of biology, and especially the age of human biology. Now, this is not to diminish the ongoing importance of the physical sciences. Quite the contrary. The boundaries between scientific disciplines have largely disappeared. We have today a near continuum of science from the atomic level to that of the whole organism. This is a remarkable event that has taken place before our eyes and that we've barely noticed over the last half-century, but we have all been present to witness it taking place. We will one day understand every aspect of human life in chemical and in physical terms, and with that understanding will come control over disease, control over behavior, including tolerance and aggression, even control over aging and the future of the human race. Of course, how we exercise that control is a matter for everyone equally to decide. The past affords clear guidelines for fulfilling this great promise. If I were to ask you what were the major advances in medical science over the last 100 years to which I've referred, most of you would come up with a similar, if not the same list. You would think of X-rays for diagnosis and treatment. You would think of antibiotics, which have largely eradicated bacterial disease. You would think of non-invasive imaging, for example, magnetic resonance imaging or MRI for early detection of cancer and other conditions. You would surely, most of you mention genetic engineering, which is the basis of most new medicines. And the list would go on. All these medical advances have one thing in common. They were all discoveries made in the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, without any idea of an application, with no notion of curing or preventing disease. The lesson of the past is therefore counterintuitive. It tells us to solve a difficult problem in medical science, don't attempt to do so. Don't study it directly. Rather, pursue a curiosity about nature, and the rest will follow. Do basic research. I think it's instructive to examine a couple of the examples that I've given, X-rays and antibiotics, in more detail. What one learns from the history of these particular examples is particularly illuminating. X-rays were discovered by Wilhelm we'll turn to the next slide, please. X-rays were discovered by Röntgen, the only child of a textile merchant and a manufacturer in the Netherlands in the 19th century. At age 18, he was permanently expelled from school for refusing to inform a classmate who'd drawn a caricature of a teacher. And he was never allowed to attend another school in the Netherlands or in Germany again for that offense. He nevertheless, because of his great ability and his passion for science, went on to an academic career, eventually became chair in physics at the University of Würzburg, where in 1895 he was investigating the external effects of passing an electrical discharge through a cathode ray tube. And he just happened to notice a faint shimmering on the fluorescent screen elsewhere in his laboratory. He saw that that faint shimmering little hint of light on the fluorescent screen was present even if the cathode ray tube was completely draped in black cardboard or cloth. And he realized that a new kind of rays emanating from this tube must be responsible, and he named them X-rays. Actually, at the time, everyone else called them Röntgen rays. But being the modest man that he was, he insisted on the name X-rays. After that, he investigated what kind of material might block the rays emanating from the tube. He held various materials in front of the tube for the purpose, and then saw on the fluorescent screen an image of the skeleton of his own hand. This, of course, led to the immediate medical application of this basic discovery in physics. Within a year or two, it was already in widespread medical use. And in 1901, Röntgen was awarded the first Nobel Prize in physics. Now let me turn again very briefly to the history of antibiotics. Many of you will have heard the famous story of Alexander Fleming and the discovery of penicillin. You may not know, however, that it was a previous chance finding made by Fleming that formed the basis for the discovery of penicillin, and moreover that he never pursued the medical application of penicillin. Now, Fleming was a professor of bacteriology at St. Mary's Hospital in London, and he was growing bacteria that caused disease to investigate what might be used to prevent their growth and proliferation. He was growing them in a dish, and one day he had a cold, and a drop from his nose fell into the dish, and it killed the bacteria. He traced that effect to a protein in this drop that fell from his nose, a protein called lysozyme that destroys the cell walls of bacteria. This gave him the idea that there might be natural materials that could be used to combat disease-causing bacterial growth. Unfortunately, lysozyme is not useful for that purpose. But this did prepare his mind for the possibility, which was realized 6 years later in 1928, when he noticed that a mold growing on one of his dishes had also killed the bacteria in the dish. He named the active agent secreted by the mold penicillin, but he was unable to isolate it. He wrote a paper describing his findings that was published and soon forgotten. A decade later at Oxford, Howard Florey and Ernst Chain were investigating lysozyme and its target, the bacterial cell wall. They wanted to learn about the nature of lysozyme and its action upon the target. Florey had similar humble beginnings to Röntgen. He was the son of a shoemaker in Australia. He came to England on a Rhodes Scholarship and rose through the ranks to become director of the Sir William Dunn School of Pathology at Oxford. Ernst Chain was a refugee from Nazi Germany and a musical as well as a scientific genius. And he was Florey's first hire in the school that Florey came to direct at Oxford. The two together, who had a somewhat troubled relationship, both being temperamental in nature, could agree on one point, and that was that they should extend their study of lysozyme to what they believed to be other lysozymes, antibacterial agents coming from a variety of organisms. For example, penicillin. Now, Chain, as it turned out, had a near photographic memory. He could remember everything he read, and when they made this decision, he could recall having seen the paper by Fleming that everyone else had forgotten. So they thought they would investigate penicillin, as I say, believing it to be a lysozyme. Soon, chain succeeded where Fleming had failed in isolating the material, discovered it was not a protein, it was not lysozyme, it was a small chemical that could serve an important therapeutic purpose. And he and Florey demonstrated its value by studies on mice, but there remained the problem of obtaining sufficient quantities for human use. And this was an enormous challenge, which was eventually surmounted by the collaboration of literally dozens of institutions, universities, government agencies, research foundations, and pharmaceutical companies, all working together in the late 1940s and early 50s to finally realize the potential of penicillin for its therapeutic application. The result, as I have said, was the virtual eradication of bacterial disease, and for this achievement, Fleming, Florey, and Chain shared the 1945 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Now, these brief accounts that I have given you of the history of X-rays and antibiotics serve, first of all, I think, to reinforce the crucial role of basic research. They also illuminate this process of discovery. If you can move to the next slide. Work leading to discoveries is invariably done by individuals free to explore and follow the path of science wherever it may lead. All such paths lead ultimately to underlying principles, to fundamental truths of nature. And it is from this knowledge, from deep understanding, that practical benefit ultimately derives. Discovery is the engine of progress. Discovery and its offspring, technology, are all that separate us from our original primitive condition. Discovery is the hope of progress, the hope for advancement in the future. Now, the importance of discovery for medical, economic, and even military benefit has not been lost on central planners. The problem is that discoveries, by their nature, can't be planned. They arise, as I have told you, from untargeted research. They arise by what Sheldon Glashow in his remarks referred to as serendipity, beautifully illustrated by the work of Röntgen, by Fleming, and by others. The only way to assure a flow of discoveries that will benefit us all is by the support of talented individuals everywhere, including at this university and elsewhere in the world, in the unfettered pursuit of knowledge. This important lesson of the past, so well established by the experience of the past century, is often forgotten by people in government and in industry who desire greater, more immediate financial and other gain. I can recall the words from quite some time ago when I was a young person of the American president at the time, Lyndon Johnson, who lamented what he called life-saving discoveries locked up in the laboratory, and he pleaded for more translational research. This serious sentiment was mistaken. Application of existing knowledge is not the limiting factor in solving our problems. The knowledge itself is limited. As an example, it's been remarked that we know about 1% of all of human biology. In fact, the truth is we know less than that tiny fraction of 1%, and I can easily demonstrate that to you in quantitative terms. Point is, that tiny fraction of knowledge of human biology has an enormous benefit to our health, as we've just discussed, to our economies worldwide. Imagine how great would be the benefits of knowing the remaining 99.9%. Another lesson from the past, if you'll change the slide, relates to the support of basic research. This has traditionally come from governments rather than from industry, and for a good reason. The timeline is very long. Fundamental problems, the kinds of discoveries to which I've alluded, take decades. Only the public with a long-range interest in bettering the human condition will support an undertaking on that timescale. Industry with a short-term interest in the bottom line can hardly be expected to do so. What CEO could report to his or her board that a major investment has been made in research that may or may not become profitable in 20 years or longer? Impossible. Now let me give you a concrete, very recent, and I would say even a frightening example. It's a true example. I have it on good authority. Pharmaceutical companies today developing anti-cancer therapies are regularly, on a weekly basis, forced to choose between a drug that will cure cancer with a single dose and a drug that must be administered weekly and prolongs life for only a year or two. Management always makes the right decision on behalf of shareholders and pursues the less effective drug. This is not an isolated example. Again, I am told by the best oncologists in the world this happens on a weekly basis. Government clearly has a special responsibility and a unique role to play. The return on investment by government in basic research has been huge. The eradication of polio, the cure of childhood leukemia, and many of the diseases have not only saved vast amounts in treatment and productivity, not to mention human suffering. The investment has been repaid many, many times over. The investment was even very small to begin with. The annual budget for cancer research in the United States today is $5 billion, less than 10% of the annual expenditure on soft drinks. Less than a week, less than 1 week of the cost of the lamentable war in Iraq. Now you, in this audience, others in very many places around the world may ask, why not wait for a large country like the United States with its rich government to fund basic research, publish the new knowledge, and then benefit? Why shouldn't smaller countries like Malaysia or Thailand or many other places that I visited where there are also very fine universities around the world concentrate on applications that have particular economic or, unfortunately, in many cases, military or other value? The answer is the importance of leadership. Those who create new knowledge will lead and most benefit from its application. To me, the most obvious examples are high-tech and biotech, both of which began next door to where I live, next door to the universities in the San Francisco Bay Area, where the discoveries that led to these technologies were made. Others around the world have joined in the rewards to a very great extent, but the leaders have been vastly more economically and otherwise successful. Not only in the past, but I'm afraid also in the future, and that is because not of the discoveries, not of the knowledge, not of the existing technology, but of the people, because of the talent that drives the enterprise. The best and the brightest still come to train in the San Francisco Bay Area, and many of them will remain after sometimes after having trained elsewhere. It is crucial for other places, other countries to compete, to retain their native talent, and to recruit from abroad as well. A marketplace for talent is in the best interests of all. A market for the employment of young scientists is of particular importance, not only to retain their talent, but even to encourage them to do science in the first place. The choice of a career in science represents a great sacrifice. A passion for science must be weighed against a long period of training, 10 years of postgraduate study at low wages, and the possibility, I'm afraid, of no career at the end. The importance of young scientists cannot be overstated. Progress in science, and discovery in particular, is the work of young minds. Now, the marketplace for talent, to which I've alluded, is both academic and industrial. And I should say, by emphasizing the crucial role of government in the support of science, I don't mean to diminish the importance of industry. I've already noted the vital contribution made by pharmaceutical companies in the development of penicillin. This is not an isolated or a rare example, but rather an illustration of a time-honored process. Industry has been and will remain primarily responsible for translating discoveries made in academic laboratories into commercially viable technologies. The time scale for industrial development may be small, but the financial scale is certainly not small. A pharmaceutical company will invest hundreds of millions of dollars in the improvement and testing of a single drug to gain regulatory approval. Now, if I may have the next slide. Basic science may be a cure-all for practical problems, but what possible relevance does it have to social issues, questions of human rights, of international peace, of other things that concern us so much in the world today? On one level, let me simply state the obvious. You can read it in very many lectures written by others, and I won't belabor the point. The practice of science is truly an example of international cooperation. A majority of the young scientists in my own laboratory over the years, a majority have come from Europe and Israel, from Asia, and from Central and South America. And my laboratory is no exception. The findings made by these young people, and indeed by everyone in science, are published in a worldwide scientific literature. It's available for everyone to read, to criticize, and eventually to exploit. Now, to turn beyond that obvious point, it is often remarked, and it is true, that education is important to combat hatred, intolerance, and other afflictions in society, but education in general, and scientific knowledge in particular, is not enough. It turns out not to be the universal prescription for social ills. The most learned society, perhaps in the history of mankind, that of 20th century Germany, perpetrated, as you know, the worst offense against humanity, the Holocaust. More than half of those who planned the mass murder of the Jews at the Wannsee Conference in 1941 held doctoral degrees. The product of scholarship, including science, will not alone protect us from such atrocities in the future. Rather, I believe it is the culture of science and of intellectual activity in general that may serve as a paradigm, at least, for addressing societal problems. Science seeks fundamental principles, as I have told you, and scientific truth, at least, is universal. In an analogous fashion, societies are sustained by the rule of law, whose application depends on an unbiased judiciary. As I say, an analogous statement. In a world such as ours, beset by irrational forces, science truly represents the light of reason. And the rule of law has been viewed since ancient times in a similar way. Sandra Day O'Connor, formerly a justice on the American Supreme Court, wrote recently that the belief of Aristotle, if you could change to the next slide, she quoted the belief of Aristotle that the rule of law is nothing less than the rule of reason, balanced by considerations of equity, so that just results may be achieved in particular cases. Alexander Hamilton, I think you should go to the next slide because I got them out of order here, and I will back up. Alexander Hamilton, who was a soldier in the American War of Independence in the 18th century and an architect of the American Constitution, once wrote, "A steady, upright, and impartial administration of laws is essential because no man can be sure he may not tomorrow be the victim of a spirit of injustice by which he may be the gainer today." Science may not solve the world's social problems, but the culture of science, the pursuit of universal truth, can at least serve as a model for doing so. Now, if you go back to the previous slide, I can't remark on the pursuit of truth without addressing the relationship between science and religion. The pursuit of truth underlying the human condition is older than Aristotle. Both Eastern and Western religion are founded on fundamental principles, very similar ones. The precepts of Buddhism, for example, or the Ten Commandments of Judaism is another example. Beyond such a foundation on principle, both science and religion, as we all know, have as their purpose explaining fundamental mysteries of our existence and of our universe. Their purposes are very similar, though the conclusions reached are often very different. But what is remarkable is that we seek knowledge of all, that we feel impelled to do so. We will expend an enormous effort to do so. We'll take mortal risks and endure great suffering to gain knowledge. An obvious example is the exploration of earthly and outer space. Another would be the creation of art and literature. An urge to explore is a part of our nature. both science and religion serve as perfect illustrations of this. This urge to explore was a major factor in the evolution of our species, and the goal is testing the limits of the possible and of the knowledge that lies beyond. The rewards, of course, are primarily personal. Clearly, we possess an inherent desire to know, an urge to understand, an urge that is common to science and religion, and it is truly an expression of our human spirit. I told you it's the overarching purpose of basic research, but now I emphasize that it's deeply ingrained. I believe it's more powerful than greed or lust or other motivations. It's led to life as we know it. And though sometimes a source of evil, it can be more often beneficial. I've already mentioned the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake is vital for our future, because it's the source of progress. A second reason for the pursuit of knowledge, which I would emphasize now, is the intrinsic value of intellectual activity. Truth does have a certain objective purity. Now, I can't conclude without remarking the urge to understand, common between science and religion, and so fundamental to human activity, has been encouraged by great success. As others have remarked, no human capability is more remarkable than that of unraveling the mysteries of our existence, including our very capabilities themselves. Now, we don't know how far these capabilities will extend. Already, our explanations have gone beyond simple reason. And I think probably most of you know that genetic information, our genes perform a dual role. They're both a repository of information that is passed from parents to offspring, and they're at the same time a source of information used to direct the activity of every living thing in every generation. Now, the first step in the use of the genetic information is reading that information, and that's accomplished by a giant assemblage of protein molecules. My colleagues and I at Stanford University over the years obtained an image, an actual picture of this assemblage of protein molecules in the very act of reading the genetic information. The image shows the location of every one of the 30,000 atoms involved in the process. What we realize when we study this image, what we see is a minute machine with moving parts, what we refer to as a clamp, jaws, rudder, lid, trigger. It's a marvel of natural engineering. Its intricacy, its efficiency, are scarcely imaginable in terms of evolution, and yet it did arrive by evolution over a period of vast time. Now finally, it may be thought that understanding fundamental processes in this way and grasping, for example, the power of geologic time somehow diminishes the wonders of nature. But on the contrary, one is truly awestruck by the beauty and the grandeur of it all. This sense of awe can evoke a spiritual response, as Einstein once wrote, and shown on this quotation from him on the last of this series of slides. The most beautiful emotion, Einstein said, that we can experience is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion that stands at the cradle of all true art and science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead, a snuffed-out candle. The sense that behind anything that can be experienced, there is something that our minds cannot grasp, whose beauty and sublimity reaches us only indirectly. This is religiousness, and in this sense, and in a sense only, I'm a religious man. This same sense of awe can engender a belief in the power of reason. Many of us engaged in work such as I've described share the conviction all mysteries of nature will ultimately succumb to explanation, as I have told you at the outset, in chemical and physical terms. Of course, we can't know that this is so. It's an article of faith. Science, like religion, is powered by faith. An article of faith which will continue to be tested for as long as we endure. If the pursuit of understanding reflects a primal urge, as I have mentioned, the satisfaction to be gained from it is not less important. The pursuit of science is a great joy. And an important key to success in science is the sheer love of it, which is not to say that work is always fun. It's more often a struggle, and most things we do fail. But occasional progress is exhilarating. It's rewarding, and it leads us on. So in all of its aspects of faith, of passion, the quest for larger meaning, science resembles religion. At the deepest level, both science and religion are, as I've said, reflections of our humanity. Where science departs from religion, of course, is its foundation upon objective, verifiable truth. And that is one thing in particular that I believe science offers to society. Finally, I'll summarize with the next slide using the language of this gathering. Science is a literal bridge to the understanding of nature and to practical benefits, and to the personal fulfillment that I have told you inevitably follows. Basic science is at the same time a figurative bridge to the solution of societal problems through the example it sets of rationality, the rule of law, and impartiality, an unbiased judiciary. Science leads directly to technological progress. The culture of science may lead, although indirectly, to progress towards peace and understanding. And with that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Kornberg, for the thought-provoking discourse on the power of basic research in the pursuit of knowledge for the betterment of life. Professor Kornberg, if you are agreeable, we'll have a short question and answer session. And I invite Yang Bahagia Dr. Sharifah to chair the session.
Firstly, on behalf of the audience, we express gratitude for that presentation. I know you are trying to shorten a lot of things, but now that we have the question and answer, I know they have a lot of questions that they would like to raise. That may be very challenging for you, but we know you can manage. Those at the back, if you do want to ask questions, you just come forward to the microphone. Can I invite the first? Please, teacher.
I can. First point that I want to make is that the accessibility, there must be greater accessibility of scientific research and communication of findings in simple layman language. There isn't enough of this. Secondly, although atheistic, science and spirituality embodied in religion must and will find congruence. I think Einstein has something to say about that. And although science is based on objectivity and verifiability, all knowledge is in fact subjective, a product of our minds.
Could we have your question?
Coming to it. Yeah?
I can see many.
Please bear with me. Yeah? Scientific research, coming to the question. Scientific research these days is highly collaborative, not only cross-cultural but interdisciplinary. You seem to be an exception in individuality rather than the rule. I mean, is there some reason for this? Now, you moved perhaps from Stanford to Cambridge. Yeah, the adjunct to this question. You moved from Stanford to Cambridge to Harvard and back to Stanford. Was this deliberate to help in your research? I mean, or was it just random sort of journey? Thank you. I mean, if time permits, I will continue later.
Techniques, and then came eventually back to Stanford. A short stint on the faculty at Harvard. This is common not only in America, it's even, I think, the rule for students here who will most often do graduate work, perhaps at this university, but then go abroad for postgraduate study. And then may find themselves moving from one position to another during their academic careers. So I think what I did in that respect was not unusual. you alluded to the fact that my work was that of an individual, and that was both true and in a certain sense not the case. So on the one hand, let me say that indeed emphasize a point that I made, that every discovery is made by an individual, that every idea is the product of one mind. Sometimes more than one person will think of the same thing at the same time, but it's terribly important to remember that creativity, the innovation that we prize, is invariably the product of individuals thinking freely and with the means to pursue what ideas they have. Sometimes these individuals may work together in groups, but it is nevertheless the free thinking and action of individuals that powers the entire enterprise, that drives it forward. And the goal of every government, every university, of every laboratory should be to empower individuals. Now, in that respect, let me emphasize the work for which, for example, I won the Nobel Prize was not that of, was not mine alone. I benefited from the collaboration of more than 100 brilliant young scientists over the years. And whatever was achieved was as much or more due to them and to their efforts and to their genius than to any contribution of my own. Nevertheless, if I may take credit for one thing, and one thing only, it is that I found a way to enable them to express their own individual creativity.
Thank you, Professor Kornberg. Thank you very much. That was very truly enough, over and over again. I mean, I was doing some work on cisplatin, and you can see that's also serendipitous discovery. So, would you agree that great discovery actually would come from a very spiritual mind?
So let me say yes in the following sense. That, and the fortunate thing about discovery is that it is inevitable. It may happen by chance, but the odds are high in your favor if you pursue the work with passion, if you pursue it with a love of the activity. My father used to say that an experiment can tell if you love it. Because only then will it succeed. It's very true. If you do something with that kind of intensity, then you will recognize, or there's a good chance of your perceiving when something significant has happened. If it's done in a casual or indifferent manner, of course, that's most unlikely. So, yes, in that very important sense, science is an example on the faith and the practice, the passion invested in it, of what in other realms may be referred to as spirituality.
Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Dr. Abubakar. I'm a PhD student in OBHUKM. My question is regarding some of the probable hurdles or problems you face maybe during your postgraduate career or postdoctoral career that you have successfully overcome. I would like you to share with us so that we can use this as a very good guide to a successful science career. Thank you very much.
Let me say that my experience as a student, as a postgraduate student, that is to say, postdoctoral fellow, I went to Cambridge, England, and then in the science I did since, what I do today, what I will do in the future, is exactly the same as that of any other scientist. We are always alone, so to speak, confronting the challenge, attempting to unlock the mysteries of nature. Each one of us must individually try and think as best we can what to study, how to do it, and then find the wherewithal, the means to go about it. So the challenges which I face are universal, no different from those that you do. I can remember very well when I started as a graduate student, and again when I went to Cambridge as a postgraduate student to work in a marvelous laboratory, and then subsequently my own always facing that very first question. What to do, what problem to solve, what question to ask, where to begin. It's the same as the one that confronts you on a daily basis. It was the one that I had to address at the beginning before and that I will have to confront tomorrow.
Hello, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum. Selamat pagi. What do you think about the convergence of nanotechnology now? That people say that molecular biologists, physicists, chemists, everybody seems to be converging on a single scale, whereby in the future, nanomedicine, for example, will be solved by not so-called doctors, but maybe by biosensors, by information technology, all converting to one single effort, very large-scale effort. Don't you think that it will be revolutionary, and how does your work probably will contribute towards this future development? Thank you very much.
Sure. So it's useful in that regard to reflect on the progress of the science, which I only described very briefly in the course of my lecture. I alluded to the erosion of the boundaries between disciplines. I said that we have today a virtual continuum from atoms to whole organisms. In fact, the work over the past 50 years in molecular biology provides a perfect example in a way underlies what you refer to as the emergence of nanotechnology. So when I went to Cambridge to learn how to study the structures of biological molecules, to discover the arrangement of atoms within those molecules, I went to the laboratory where the method for doing so was invented in Cambridge, England. And at the time, it was possible with great difficulty to find the arrangement of several thousand atoms in a small individual biomolecule. The work for which I was awarded the Nobel Prize represented, and I think one of the reasons why it was singled out, a step up to the next level beyond that, finding the arrangement of atoms not in a single biomolecule, but in an assemblage, what I described to you as a minute or indeed a molecular machine. That is a perfect example of a nano, what people today call a nano machine. It is formed not of a single biomolecule, but of a whole collection of them functioning in a concerted fashion to execute a very complex process. There are many naturally occurring nanomachines, and there's much interest in devising artificial or synthetic nanomachines. So it represents, as it were, a logical next step in a progression, but that it won't end there. And that's what it is so important to realize. What we today call nanotechnology is only a step in an ongoing development. We will soon learn how to integrate the activities of many of these machines to eventually arrive at processes that we can perceive are executed by intact organisms. Nanotechnology is an important stepping stone towards still greater things.
Thank you very much. May I ask you a personal question?
Of course.
I'm not sure whether you have experienced this, but when your love and your passion dies off, what is the single most thing that would wake you up and want you to move on and finish what you have started?
The motivation that one has for an activity such as I have been engaged in doing for these very many years, I think is not at all different from that of people in any walk of life. There is an ambition that we are born with to try to go further, to achieve. I alluded to this extraordinary human impulse to explore, and it's what took, as it were, primitive men out of Africa. It's what led to populating the world. It's what led to everything else that we know, including the evolution of our species, I think beyond that, it's impossible to explain. I mean, why do we care? Why do we try? Why do I get up in the morning and go to the lab with such eagerness? Beyond that, I can't tell you. I think it's an emotion. It's a characteristic of all of us as humans. It's something we share.
So that sums up that your passion and your love has never died. Every morning you're a very lucky person.
I am, if anything, more ambitious to discover something new today than I was 10 years before that.
I see your hand here. Yeah. Morning, Professor.
Yeah.
I'm the science student for A-levels right now. Now, with respect to science as a basis for bridging cultures and fostering peace, I have two questions. One, what is my role in this? And the second one would be, what advice would you give to students like me?
So the role of every student, of all of us, at every level, is to try and add to the body of knowledge. That is the most straightforward purpose. Our purpose is not only to learn, but to add new facts to contribute in that way. Beyond that, our purpose is to do so in an absolutely reliable manner, to be sure that what we contribute is true. Someone alluded earlier, one of the questioners, to the fact that truth is ultimately subjective. Indeed, there is much philosophical discourse along those lines, but most of us know what we mean by truth in science. It's never absolute, but it's generally agreed. And one's goal is to add to the body of knowledge in a reliable fashion. But then after that, we all have an equal obligation as members of the society, the community, of humankind on this planet, an equal obligation to try and ensure that the values which I suggest are embodied in that pursuit extend beyond. But that's something that doesn't distinguish scientists from anybody else. Scientists are no better or worse than anybody else. We all can only try and do our best in these regards.
Good morning. My name is Zarabuddin Ahmad. My concern is that the basic science education, basic science is simply not reaching society, all levels of society. For example, the hyper-excessive consumption of protein. We know for a long time already, it's on the US Institute of Medicine website, that the human body on average needs only 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. That means if you weigh, even you're a healthy person, 100 kilograms body weight, you only need 80 grams of protein per day. And all foods are loaded with protein. For example, cooked animal meat is about 30% protein. Even textured soy is even better, 50% protein. Dal, chickpeas, cooked chickpeas is 9% protein, and so on. And yet we continue to consume excessive protein, especially by slaughtering billions of animals and keep eating slaughtered factory mass slaughtered meat like candy. And it's doing us great harm in terms of environment, in terms of medical, and in terms of economy. It's very costly to raise billions of animals and then to slaughter them, and the environmental impact, the animal waste, clogging our water sources, water supply, and so on. Medically, the human body cannot store excess protein. Excess protein either it burns it immediately or yeah, that's the problem we have to address. Basic science is not reaching the public.
Once again, if I may, there are quite separate issues that you raise. On the one hand, the spirit of basic science, of inquiry and of pursuing deep insight, fundamental understanding, needs to be inculcated in schools, and it needs to be a part of everyday practice. The spirit of inquiry, of seeking to understand, is something which can be common to all. Now, that spirit of inquiry and what accompanies it, of questioning, of seeking answers that are believable because they are based on facts and reason and a reliable analysis, can then be applied to many things, such as the example that you gave. So I think that if again, the culture, as I say, of science and intellectual inquiry in general were more widespread, questions or concerns such as you raise could be addressed in a more thoughtful manner.
Professor Rahman?
Rahman Jamal from UKM. Thank you, Professor Kornberg. I'm very inspired today, actually. I'd like to give up my administrative post and go back to the lab. Which was one of my questions, actually. How do you sort of rationalize a lot of the talented scientists who are burdened with administrative posts? This happened during your time. My second question is, you mentioned you attributed your Nobel Prize to sort of your colleagues, 100 of them working together across many different institutions and so on. Whilst we now are bogged down by issues of IPs and so on. So how do you balance between competitiveness as well as working together to sort of producing results to solve global solutions? And my third question is, you mentioned about untargeted research, but a lot of us have been indoctrinated by, or even forced to think about beginning with the end in mind, in the sense of trying to ask a question before to answer a question, or even to solve problem, which in a sense sort of trying to tell us target towards a solution. So how do you comment on that? Thank you.
So, in regard to the first question, let me answer, the first couple of questions I'll answer in very general terms. I alluded a moment ago to the fact scientists are people. Those who work with me, no exception, of course, and indeed, a good fraction of scientific activity, certainly the role I have played over the years, is one of management, and as I have already mentioned, one of discovering how to encourage and elicit the best that people have to offer. So administration in that is very much a part of science, but its purpose is ultimately related to human nature, to people, and to what enables them to be most productive to solve the problems that we all set out to do. Now, on the second point that you raise, of basic versus applied or even translational science, this is a serious problem. And there's no getting around it. I mean, the fact is that the pressures that we all feel to solve problems directly are misguided. And if, as I have pointed out, there are very few solutions to pressing problems that are obvious, or else they would already have been done. If they're not obvious, it's because we don't yet know what we need to discover in order to solve the problem. And we're just wasting our time if we beat around the bush and try and do things with today's knowledge that is insufficient to address, these challenges of the future. So there's no prescription that I can offer. No escape that I know of from that, except to try and make the case and do one's best and wherever possible to pursue and to enjoy the pursuit, to relish the pursuit of fundamental truth.
Okay, I think I saw you.
Good morning, Prof. I'm Sylvia, a postgraduate student. I would like to ask Prof. Kornberg's opinion on what is the role of government and local university in cultivating young scientists to explore and deepen their interest in basic science instead of just doing it for academic grading or profit? Thank you.
I mean, it's interesting. What you allude to is a problem everywhere. And I don't have an answer. I see it in my own children. When I was their age, so 40 years ago, 50 years ago, school was less demanding, and I could spend most of my time in some form of recreational activity. And I think, in retrospect, that's very important, ultimately, for the possibility of creativity and productivity later in life. I see my kids as I see young people all over the world, including in not only in the United States, but in Asian countries where I have visited, in China, Korea, Japan, what have you, caught in a squeeze between, on the one hand, increasing competition for success in their academic careers, and on the other hand, the proliferation of information that characterizes our age. And it's a terrible bind. My solution, I'm afraid, which my kids don't listen to, is just to ignore it all. Don't do the homework, don't study, don't because I think, quite personally, I honestly believe that is counterproductive. I think that you have to learn principles, and then I think you have to try and apply them, and then you acquire knowledge because you want it, because it interests you, because it relates to the problem under study. But my solution won't obviously be very widely accepted or even successful, and as I have looked at my own children, ignore me.
I saw a hand here.
Thank you for the lecture. I have a practical question. I'm a visitor to my name is Shahid. My question is about how we always have pressure about publications and the standard and the impact factors and all that. So quality and quantity, you always have a choice to go for quality or quantity, and sometimes quality papers that published in Science Nature require several years of work with several labs, and you always have a choice, what you do. So look for your comments on that.
I can perhaps give you an answer by way of example. So the work that I alluded to that we have done that was cited by the Nobel Committee took over 20 years and resulted in no publications until the end. And so then you might reasonably ask, how is it possible to support it? How could we possibly engage in that activity all that time? The American granting agencies take great pride. They say, we supported this work even at a time when it wasn't apparent it would succeed. That's all nonsense. The truth of the matter is that one had to find ways of sustaining the research, obtaining funds, enabling the careers of young people, while keeping still an eye on the distant goal. And so the challenge that you refer to is one that is ever present, will never go away, and you discover how, for example, to publish papers, even when you haven't discovered the answer. You figure out how to persuade people to fund the research even when it hasn't succeeded. This was my principal activity for those 20 years.
Okay, Dr. Ko, and then the last hand, then we'll stop.
Thank you, Dato. Professor Kornberg. A lot of people are interested to know. There seems to be a preponderance of Jews winning Nobel Prizes in science, medicine, or what have you. Maybe today you can enlighten us on how the Jews seem to be very successful in such a pursuit. Thank you very much, Prof.
That question is impossible for me to answer. I mean, it happens to be true, but my guess is that there will be a preponderance of Asian Nobel laureates in the next generation. They didn't have the same opportunities. They didn't derive from the same culture of science in the previous one.
So I would quite confidently predict that will be the case. But to go back and ask why there was a preponderance of Jews in the previous generation, something that may have been the nature of their education. People often point out the fact that the Jewish religion is one of question. That every question is answered with a question. That it was a habit of mind, always to try and probe deeper. And this was something children learned. It was part of their upbringing. But again, not only do I not know the answer to that question, but I imagine we may never know.
Last question.
Morning, Professor. Something keep lingering in my mind, and I hope you can inspire me in that. Okay, science is so based on what we can see, and we believe what we are seeing. But the problem is there's so limitation in our naked eye. So how could we really go beyond this obstacle and really see the signs of real science? Thank you.
I didn't fully understand. It would be so kind of just to repeat once more. The question is, how can we go beyond what we can perceive with the naked eye?
Yeah, because we only see, like, we can prove DNA by only looking at the gels or anything. We only believe in our eyes, but the actual fact is the eye has so much limitations.
An actual fact, what was the last?
The eye, our eye.
Limitations.
Yes.
I'm not sure at what level to answer the question, but I might just point out that the image that we produced, for example, of this molecular machine showing the location of its 38,000 atoms was, of course, not possible by light photography, by direct imaging in the manner that we're accustomed to doing. It can only be done with the use of highly intense X-ray beams available at accelerators around the world, for example, at the Stanford Linear Accelerator where we did our work. And then the results of scattering X-rays of all the molecules that we studied had to be analyzed using the most powerful computers available at the time. So nothing that we discovered was in any way visible or even remotely accessible to direct inspection. Such indirect means are, of course, the basis of particle physics, quantum chemistry, and ultimately of the underlying principles and the understanding of all molecules of human biology. Does that answer your question?
Okay. I will let you, because I don't want you to go home and not be able to sleep tonight.
Good morning, Prof. Kornberg. I'm Sue. My name is Sue. I would like to know, is it the language is the limiting factor for the success in science in the international level, especially for some non-English speaking country? Thank you.
And it's a very good question that you ask, and I think that there is no doubt that I, as a native English speaker, and many others who enjoy that advantage, in fact have an unfair advantage. Life is not fair. There are many such obstacles that we face in life. Nevertheless, I'm impressed that people here can speak and understand English quite well. I have long been an advocate of a different mode of elementary education. It happens, as you very well know, that children can learn as many languages as they're presented with and speak them as native, if only that is done early in life. My own children speak 3 languages fluently. Sadly, I can't claim the same thing. There's a joke that you may have heard. If you were to ask, and now I have to use English language, how to describe someone who speaks 3 languages like my children, you would say they're trilingual. If you ask how to describe someone who speaks 2 languages, the answer is multiply. If you ask how to describe someone who speaks 1 language, the answer is American. by your capacity to speak and understand English as well as your native language, you're actually well beyond what I can claim. I mean, you enjoy a very great advantage in life. Nevertheless, in regard to science, there's no doubt there has to be a universal language, and it happens to be English, and it enables us all to communicate scientific information. But you and most others are capable of reading and understanding it, and so you don't really suffer a severe limitation in that regard.
I'm going to...
if I may just ask one question. I will not be here in the afternoon, so I suspect that you're very close to arriving at a cure for cancer. How long do you think it will take? Thank you.
That's an interesting question. I believe that with adequate support, cures for most cancers could easily be found in the next 10 years. A third to a half of all of us under present circumstances will die of cancer. If there are 25 people in this room my age or older, at least one of us has today an undiagnosed fatal cancer. It is not necessary for anyone to die of cancer. If, as I have mentioned, we would spend in the United States alone as much as we do on cancer research, as much as we do, say, for a week of the lamentable war in Iraq, we could cure cancer even sooner.
Very important. I want to conclude with just a takeaway message, which I think Professor Kornberg has repeated many, many times, that we all have an extraordinary impulsive and to seek answers to the mysterious understanding of science. And that if we do this with a lot of passion and activity, then discovery is inevitable. And we all, to answer the student, which I thought was a very good question, we all have an obligation to not just learn, but to add to knowledge, and that we must do this in a very reliable manner so that we contribute the truth to the world. So thank you, and
thank you, Dato, for chairing the session. We would also like to thank the International Peace Foundation and Academy of Sciences Malaysia for the opportunity to host this prestigious event, and we hope that this program will be extended to future visits from Nobel Laureate. We also thank all the other corporate sponsors who contributed to making this event a success. As a token of our appreciation for your presence here today, I invite Yang Bahagia Dato to present gifts to Professor Kornberg, Mr. Morawetz, and Yang Berbahagia Datuk Haji Ahmad Zaidi lain. To accompany His Excellency Dr. Kirk, Professor Kornberg, Mr. Morawetz, and Yang Bahagia Datuk Haji Ahmad Zaidi, as well as distinguished guests, to partake in some lunch in the banquet room.